The Last of Us, one of the greatest stories ever made in gaming history. A story that took the basic form of zombie apocalypse and turned it into a terrifying journey of loss and tragedy, taking the horror Joel experiences at the start of the game and taking it into the same story with Ellie and Joel's relationship. The Last of Us was written beautifully, but how? Why is this random zombie apocalypse game so unique and so well written? Today is the 10-year anniversary of The Last of Us, and today I will be discussing how The Last of Us took amazing story writing strategies and changed the gaming industry forever. The Last of Us has a great way of introducing new things into the game. One of these ways was introducing the shooting mechanic. The writer and creative director Neil Druckmann stated that the basic shooting games had L2 for aim and R2 for shoot. They wanted to introduce this in a way that felt right for the story. For this reason, they showed a man trapped by the surrounding environment in a spore-infested area. His mask is broken and he asks you not to leave him to the infected.
So again, it's a way to expose you to mechanic, teach you it, and put some emotional weight behind it and show you this is the world that you live in.
And that it does. The Last of Us does a perfect job of showing you how the world is built. At times it focuses less on the infection that plagues the world and more about the characters and their relationships with each other. At every possible opportunity, the developers use their resources to make every part of the game flow properly, and it makes you actually care about what's happening. The characters of The Last of Us are incredibly well made. Joel experiences so much loss and so much sadness until he meets Ellie. At that point, he's scared by what happened to his daughter in the beginning of the game, which is something I'd like to discuss in a little bit, and we'll get to that. They use Ellie as this kind of guiding light to Joel, to help him realize that this isn't just some kid that's immune to this terrible plague, but instead a second chance for Joel, for him to open up to Ellie and accept another person in his life, and finally get over the tragedy that he experienced in the beginning of the game. Throughout the game, we're constantly reminded that the name Sarah is something Joel never wants to hear. When Ellie brings it up, he gets angry at her. When Tommy gives Joel a photo of him and Sarah, he declines the gift, and Joel never lets Ellie get close to him. That is until Joel gives Ellie a rifle and they start to finally build trust for one another. But another amazing thing this game does is make you care about the characters you're playing as. We play as Joel. That's kind of a staple in The Last of Us Part 1. But what does Ellie do? Instead of having Ellie just be there, the developers had her throw bricks at enemies. If you're in a close combat situation, Ellie can jump on the enemy and stab them, giving you an opening to attack. Ellie literally helps you endure and survive. And that's not the extent of it either. Almost every NPC character you meet that isn't trying to gun you down will help you in some way or another. Sam and Henry, while not doing that much, still did a decent bit. But one thing all these characters have in common is that they help you solve puzzles.
You have two characters, and you constantly have to think about how do I have to rely on one another. So I might have a gate that I can't get past.
It's jammed from the other side.
If I'm with Ellie, I can boost her over the gate, she can open it from the other side, so I'm learning to rely on Ellie. If I came on this gate and I didn't have Ellie, I'd have to find a different solution.
Okay. Ta-da!
The game has the NPCs you're with help you with a multitude of puzzles. Whether it be getting Ellie across a lake so she can get a ladder to help you get across, jumping a fence that's locked from the inside, and once again, that's not the extent. The Last of Us not only builds upon these characters during cutscenes, but also during regular gameplay. After the fight in the hotel in Pittsburgh, Ellie is seen crossing her arms a lot, being more distant and talking less, helping less. When Ellie is hurting, you as the player are hurting as well. The players feel more empathetic through this. It makes the players care more about these characters and their feelings.
After Ellie and Joel get in a fight in the hotel in Pittsburgh,
And you just hang back like I told you to.
You could see her, she's crossing her arms more, she's more standoffish, she's talking less than she's used to. Oh, this person that's walking with me is behaving differently. This is what it feels like to be in a fight.
Joel has a daughter that we see very briefly in the first 20 minutes of the game. The developers had originally planned for the player to play as Joel the entire time in the prologue, but instead they decided to make the centerpiece of the prologue be in the eyes of a child. It's scarier as a player to be a weak and defenseless child trying to go through this than a strong adult with a gun. It's more intense and terrifying to see the news going to heck and hearing an explosion in the eyes of a child than it is, once again, a strong man who is capable of taking care of himself. We see the terror unfold around the family as they run to get out of the city. Sadly, though, Sarah breaks her leg and is shot by a soldier. And this is when we learn why Joel has so much trauma throughout the rest of the game. It's this looming threat over Joel that this girl that he's growing so close to could die just like Sarah. And that's inevitably why Joel decides that even though he wanted his weapons this whole time throughout the whole game, it's not worth the life of Ellie. They leave the hospital, but Joel still lies to Ellie to protect himself from the harm it would do if she disagreed with him. It builds upon their story in ways that most games don't. Most games just kind of shove backstory at them and be like, hey, this is why they're like this, now feel sad. But it builds throughout the whole game, and it's so well written. The Last of Us was certainly an influential game at the time. Today is the 10-year anniversary of the game, and I figured it was fitting to show how amazing the game told its story. It tells it through the eyes of the right person at the right time. Through the eyes of Joel's daughter, to Joel, to Ellie, and then to Joel once again. And even in the second game, it keeps things in Ellie's eyes throughout the whole game, having the player share the experiences in-game with the character. It's a great concept and an amazing idea for a game, one that I wish more games did. And this showed that stories like this truly were possible, stories that focus less on the game that's happening in front of the player and more about making the player want to play the game and experience it as the characters. So no matter what you think of The Last of Us, it will always be one of the greatest games that changed how games told their stories forever.